Hi guys, so after week 0, it's time for me to do my week 0 reaction. This is kind of a summary of what I noticed, what I saw during these couple games to start the season. So starting off with the obvious one, the most covered game, the game with the most attention, and for good reason, Florida State and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, no one really expected them to win. Everyone thought they'd be, a good team, an improved team. Their defense obviously needed some work. Their offense with Haynes King obviously had some improvements over these last couple of years, but this was not really expected. And I think there's definitely an argument that the game was in Dublin, was week 0, and Florida State maybe just was kind of caught off guard. But at the same time, DJ Uyunglele, he did not really look confident. This team did not look like their former self last year. And I do think part of that is just the drama of, losing their spot basically to Alabama and just Jordan Travis getting injured, and that basically cost them not only his season, but their whole season as a team. And I guess this Florida State team now has to deal with the fact that they have a very tough schedule ahead of them. I'll show it in a second, but Florida State has a very tough path ahead to the playoffs, and they're going to have to win some very tough games to get there now. In the expanded college football playoff, it obviously is still possible for them to get in. If it was still the 4-team playoff, their season would basically be over right now. But this loss did come at the right time, you could say, because the playoffs expanded, and now they do still have a chance to get in. But they do have a game against Notre Dame. They have a game against Miami. They have a game against, I forget who else it was, but those are just 2 games they got. They have a game against Florida, who I know they're not a great team compared to those 2 teams, but still it's a rivalry game. You never know. Memphis, who's going to be competing for a playoff spot. So just these kind of games you can't really lose, and they did. And so now they got to deal with that. And also, moving down to some of these other games, you got Montana State, New Mexico, and overall just Nevada and New Mexico in general. A good performance by the Mountain West. I know they both lost, but New Mexico and Nevada are 2 of the lower ranked teams in the Mountain West, and they both put up good fights against higher ranked or more heavily favored opponents, whether it's Montana State, SMU. Montana State, this is kind of a disappointing performance for them, honestly. Their offense is very good, and they only, I guess I say only, but it is against New Mexico, who is one of the worst FBS teams. Montana State, one of the best FCS teams, so you expect them to do a little bit better. I will say, though, I did predict the score to be 35-27, so I'd actually get really close on that one of my predictions video. That's the one I actually was close on. But Montana State, I definitely think it was kind of a disappointing performance for Montana State. And although New Mexico lost, I think they're definitely heading in the right direction. They had a huge lead. They were up 31-14 for a lot of the game. I thought it was over. I thought New Mexico was about to dominate. But obviously, Montana State, they have a winning culture. And that's, I think, a big reason why they're able to come back. And New Mexico is still building that, so it's understandable. Then for SMU Nevada, kind of a similar story. SMU, they definitely expect to win. They expected to win this game. I think Nevada kind of was almost surprised when they found themselves ahead for a lot of the game, and it allowed SMU to kind of come back. I will say it's very surprising that SMU, I know they're massive favorites, like 27 points I think it was, but they did not score that many points in this game. 29, I know it's, again, I say only 29, but if you look at some of their past games, they've scored crazy numbers of points in these kind of early games or against teams that they should beat pretty comfortably. So for them to only win by 5, only put up 29, it's kind of surprising. I'll try to show some of those other games I'm talking about, but just massive numbers. And in this game, I mean, you think it would be right up there, but only 5-point win. And like I said, the biggest takeaway for me is that New Mexico seems to be building something. Nevada does too. They seem to be heading at least the right direction to be able to compete like this. Mountain West in general seems competitive. I already said this before, but I think Boise State is going to get more looks from the committee just because of how the Mountain West seems to be sort of like the best non-power 4 conference, I guess. So I think they'll help them in the discussions later on when it comes to Memphis and Liberty and those kinds of teams. Then looking at Delaware State and Hawaii, there's all the drama with Delaware State missing their flight and whatever. But they did have a pretty good performance. I mean, for them to be not even one of the best FCS teams like Montana State, or for them to put up a pretty good fight against Hawaii, I think at one point they were actually tied. It was early in the game, but still, that's an accomplishment to not lose by. I think Hawaii was favored by like 40 points, and I'll admit I was expecting Hawaii to win by 40 at least. Hawaii, kind of a disappointing game. I know, again, it's a win, so you can't really complain. But yeah, for Hawaii, this is not exactly what you want to see. You want more, but you can't complain. But at the same time, I definitely think you need to give credit to Delaware State here. I mean, everyone expecting them to lose by a lot, and they did lose, but not by as much as you would expect them to. And here's that schedule I was talking about. And I know Boston College is not like Alabama or anything, but it's kind of tough to go all the way back from Dublin and play another game. And so Boston College, I mean, who knows? They should win that game, but then you got Memphis, which I already talked about. They're competing for a playoff spot, which is obviously not normal, but with one of those teams being guaranteed a spot that is not a Power 5, now Power 4 conference, Memphis can be competitive, and they're going to need this game, especially because it can really help their resume. If they beat Florida State, that obviously helps them when it comes to the committee deciding who gets in, who doesn't, against teams like Boise State, against teams like Liberty, all those teams who also want to get in. So Memphis is going to really want this game. Florida State, they need that game too, so that'll be a good game. But, if you're Florida State, this is not good because you already lost one, and it's a game you probably should have won. I get it. You could say it's unfair, whatever, because you had to go to Dublin in week 0 against a team that you maybe were expecting to be that good, whose defense was much improved. And then you got California, who, you're not going all the way to California, so that should be a win. SMU, I just talked about how they had a kind of a disappointing performance, but SMU is not a bad team in any way. And Clemson, that could be a conference deciding game. Kind of depends how Miami does, but Clemson, Florida State, that's a huge game. But just overall, you look at it in SMU, Memphis, Clemson, all very close games. Even California, Boston College. there isn't really like an easy game here that's just like a guaranteed win. Then Duke, Miami. That's a huge game. And it's in Miami, and I already think in my predictions video, if you saw that one, I do think Miami's going to win this conference. So assuming that's a loss, 32 losses, you maybe get one more. You look down here, then you got Notre Dame. Then Florida, rivalry game. Charleston, maybe that's like the one guaranteed win. I'm not sure how good they are, but I don't think they're going to give Florida State much trouble. But look at the rest of their schedule. This is not easy. Florida State, unless they can really fix things quickly, which I still have hope they can. Mike Norvell is a very good coach. I definitely think he's going to have more than enough opportunity to change things. But at the same time, I just not super confident. Looking at their schedule. You just look at some of these games. Miami, assuming they lose that, assuming they lose to either Clemson or Miami, just assuming one of that's the loss, you still got to beat Notre Dame. You still got to win against one of the either Duke or North Carolina, who are pretty good. Florida in the rivalry game. So that's all I'm saying is it's going to be really tough for Florida State. And I think the Georgia Tech game just kind of made everyone, including myself, realize how difficult it's going to be for them. Well, if you thought Florida State's schedule was tough, here's Georgia Tech's schedule. And you look at it, Georgia State, that should be a win. Syracuse, that's going to be a pretty close game, I would imagine. Then the next, they do have Notre Dame, then they have Miami, then they have the NC State. Then they have Georgia. So it does not get easy for them. Virginia Tech, that's an away game, so that obviously is going to be a very challenging game. So for Georgia Tech, this is less about, okay, they had a big win, now can they make some sort of playoff run? Because I don't think they're that talented. I definitely think they're a talented team, but playoffs, probably not. So at this point, I think it's more about can they get to a bowl game, and that's less about how talented their team is, just how tough their schedule is, like I already said. You got to go to Georgia. You got to face NC State. You got to face Miami. You got to face Notre Dame. Those are all playoff contenders. You also got Louisville, Duke. You went North Carolina. All very good teams. And the other thing, too, for this team is Haynes King. Can he build some sort of Heisman case? Everyone knows who he is now after that Florida State game. So if Georgia Tech's going to continue to help themselves build their program, what better way to do that than have a Heisman Trophy winner? And they have a real shot here with Haynes King. If he can put together a good season, maybe get Georgia Tech into a really good bowl game. I know all the good bowl games are now in the playoff, but at least put together a good season. And the Heisman race is pretty open, so I think that's what you're looking at right now for Georgia Tech. And like I said, if their schedule is easier, maybe there would be more conversations about how their future could be even better. But at this point, it's really tough to see them making some sort of run with how difficult their schedule is. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.